Also, I always want to note this too. New York, Columbia University put out a study that said if the lockdown had begun a week earlier, I think it was upwards of 30,000 people might not have died.
Yep.
And that is primarily people dying in New York in the beginning.
Yep.
So New York, not only was it not some liberal overreach, if you look at the release of people to nursing homes, the delay of the lockdown, New York was insanely reckless and disgusting. And de Blasio and Cuomo bear responsibility for that as well.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. The Cuomo in particular gets no credit for moving people into nursing homes. And the reason why they had to do that was because of all the budget cuts.
Yep.
And I'm not convinced that he didn't do it. And I think we'll get more of the real story about this, over the years, but over the months, maybe years that follow. But I'm not convinced that he didn't do that as a way of hiding the deficit of public hospital beds so that he could move forward with the cutting of Medicaid that was teed up at that time. I'm quite convinced that the cutting of Medicaid drove a lot of the decisions that were there to hide the deficit of beds that we had for public hospitals in this state. Really disgusting. But at the very least, after he realized that he had killed thousands of people who shouldn't have died, or was, I should say, responsible for the deaths of thousands that could have been avoided had he not been concerned about budgetary issues, he became more responsible in these things, as opposed to Governor Ron DeSantis, who it appears will refuse to recognize reality and is just going to ride this thing all the way down. Here is Florida Governor Ron DeSantis saying, despite the fact that there's been this explosive growth in infections, and again, average age is in the mid-30s, so you're not seeing this show up in terms of deaths yet. Maybe you won't. Hard to believe you won't, but maybe you won't. All you're getting are people who are having long-term implications, long-term health implications from this. But here's DeSantis insisting that we're not gonna do anything different.
We're not going back, closing things. I don't think that really is what's driving it. I mean, people going to business is not what's driving it. I think when you see the younger folks, I think a lot of it is more just social interactions, and so that's natural. Obviously, you had a lot of different activities going on in different parts of the state. Memorial Day, the 2 weeks after Memorial Day, we saw a lot of stuff going on. So that's just the reality. But we're open. We know who we need to protect. Most of the folks in those younger demographics, although we want them to be mindful of what's going on, are just simply much, much less at risk.
Here's a guy who's really protecting his future in electoral politics, right? I mean, he must have aspirations someday to run, and he's just hoping that he can get through this, and praying that he's basically just rolling the dice. That's basically
100%. I want to just say, I mean, look, this is from June 19th in the Tampa Bay Times. Public health experts and aid groups are challenging Governor Ron DeSantis' assertion this week that migrant farm workers are driving Florida's record surge in COVID-19 cases, noting that the state help with testing, face masks, educational outreach has been late to reach agricultural communities. And that same week, DeSantis said the number one outbreak we've seen is in agricultural communities, following his statements that, quote unquote, overwhelmingly Hispanic farm workers and day laborers are leading sources of the cases. So, that's the double. From
those folks to young folks. And then next week, we'll see who else he's going to blame.
Well, that's what we've said from the very beginning, though, is that it's going to be some combination of, don't worry about it. Or to the extent this is something to worry about, it's the migrants.
Right.